laughing up delight. You like sunny delight.
Tonight on Hard Copy.
And now a mystery from across the sea. A tangled tale of wealth, power, maybe even murder. Our own Rick Abrams has the story.
It began one chilly autumn morning in 1987 when Per Alderson, out hunting in the wilds near his home, made a gruesome discovery.
Well, I often hunt behind my property for hare, grouse, deer, stuff like that. Moose sometimes, but I've never seen anything quite like this.
What Alderson found was a group of skeletons, animal skeletons, all buried together in a shallow grave.
It was, I don't know, it just seemed threatening. But they say that the torture of animals is a common trait amongst sadists. I took the constables back to the exact spot, but by the time we got there, someone had cleared away all the traces of the animal corpses. It was as if someone didn't want them found.
Hedeby, a tiny island in the Baltic Sea off the west coast of Sweden, part of the township of Hedeby, population 24,000, Hedeby itself has a population of only 25 year-round residents. Farmers, artists, a handful of retirees, a lonely pastor. But Hedeby is also the fifth-generation home of the Vanger family, one of the most powerful dynasties in the history of Sweden.
Som sagt, hjärtligt välkomna. Först får vi be att var och en söker upp sin guide.
The Vanger Corporation is among the few remaining family-held firms in the country and has interests across the spectrum of Swedish industry. The Vanger Corporation has weathered the storms of war and of declining exports, of scandals, both minor and major, and competition from across the globe. But they may have found their most formidable opponent closer to home. Per Alderson, a retired locksmith from a suburb of Stockholm, has been a Hedeby resident for 15 years on property that directly adjoins the Vanger's Island compound.
The Vangers believe that they're a special class of people, but in Sweden, no one should be above anyone else. But the Vangers they're so rich, they're so connected that they don't believe the normal set of rules apply to them. And I don't believe that that should extend to getting away with murder.
Alderson maintains that the Vanger family has used its influence in order to cover up the disappearance over 20 years ago of this woman, Harriet Vanger, daughter of Gottfried Vanger and grandniece of current CEO Henrik Vanger.
Harriet was 16 years old. She was well liked by everyone. She was happy. She was the favorite daughter of a wealthy family. And then one fall day in 1966, she just vanished. It was the ultimate locked-room mystery.
And so a local hunter embarks on a desperate search for a girl missing since 1966. But will they uncover the crime? Or was it a crime at all? These answers next.
And coming up later in the show...
It was weird.
Which statement's true? 1, this woman is perfectly normal. And get him whiter. New Tide with bleach.
And what did any of it have to do with a shallow grave filled with animal skeletons? Where was Harriet Vanger? Last seen on a remote Swedish island over 20 years ago.
It was September the 24th. It was the day of the Children's Day Parade. The celebrations across the bridge in Hedeby were well underway. At 2:15, there was an accident on the only bridge that was a link between Hedeby and the mainland. A car and an oil truck collided on the center span and fuel oil was leaking. Confusion and people were everywhere. Everyone feared an explosion.
Jag är på plats här i Hedeby där det just inträffat en allvarlig trafikolycka. Detaljerna kring olyckan är fortfarande osäkra, men vi vet att en personbil är fastklämd under en tankbil. Räddningspersonal arbetar just nu med att få ur föraren ur personbilen. Men försöken har varit misslyckade hittills. Bron bakom mig är den enda passagen mellan Hedestad och Hedeböön. Ögonvittnen säger att tankbilen på väg över bron i riktning mot Hedeböön där personbilen kom körandes i motsatt riktning. Ingen av jag har talat med har sett själva kollisionen, så orsaken till olyckan är ändå oklar.
It was during this, when everybody's attention was on the bridge, that Harriet disappeared. The driver of the oil truck, Gustav Aronson, was a local resident. He was examined at the scene and was found to be blameless. However, eyewitness accounts have it that the car was weaving recklessly before the impact. And the car was driven by no one knows. I've examined photographs, I've read police reports, eyewitness accounts, but nowhere was I ever able to identify the driver of that second car.
Oh yes, that was Kim Asplund of Gothenburg. But he was the driver of the truck, not of the car. Aronson was the driver of the car.
Detective Superintendent Bjorn Morell has lived and worked in Hedeby his whole life and took over the post from his father, Gustav Morell, who extensively investigated the Harriet Vanger case.
So there was no intention to cover up his identity?
Certainly not. My father investigated this case more thoroughly than anyone. I have all of his files pertaining to the Vanger case. If Mr. Alderson had only asked me, I could have told him.
And what about the disappearance of the animal skeletons and the grave he said he found?
Well, the location that we accompanied him to was on Vanger land, and we didn't find anything at all. In fact, the only crime that we found any evidence of was of illegal trespassing on the part of Mr. Alderson.
Members of the Vanger family declined to be interviewed for this story, but we received the following statement from the family's counsel, Dierch Froda. What happened to Harriet that fateful afternoon is a question that has haunted the Vanger family for over 20 years. As for Mr. Alderson and his irresponsible accusations, the truth is that Mr. Alderson has disputed the property line between himself and the Vangers for years, and he has been trying to desire for a cheap, illegal land grab. Mr. Alderson is less a crusader for truth than for his own self-interest. Mr. Alderson's property is bordered by the Baltic Sea to the west and the Vanger estate to the east. The question is exactly where the properties join. Since 1979, Alderson and the Vanger Corporation have been involved in a dispute arising from Alderson's contention that his property is actually 12 square kilometers larger than current property lines indicate.
Isn't it true your primary conflict with the Vanger family arises from this property dispute?
It is true that the property lines are in question. But let's not forget what's really at stake here. A beautiful young girl was cut down in the prime of her life.
Cut down?
Yes.
Do you have reason to believe Harriet was murdered?
There's no other explanation. There was no way off that island when the bridge was closed by the accident. And we know that she was last seen on the island. We know that a handbag, a wallet, and her belongings were in that room. So why would a happy, contented young girl run away? Why would somebody cover up my discovery of those animal carcasses? No, she was murdered. And the perpetrator had to be a member of that Vanger family or someone in their employ. This is a decades-old cover-up that could have only been perpetrated by powerful people with links to government and industries going back generations.
There has never been any evidence whatever that she was murdered. If Mr. Alderson has concrete evidence of any kind, the police will be happy to look at it. The fact that he has presented no such evidence should speak for itself.
Whatever the truth may be, the disappearance of Harriet Vanger decades ago is sure to continue haunting the memories of those who knew her, those who tried to find her, and those who come after, drawn into the web of intrigue spun by this tantalizing mystery.